All right, everybody. Well, welcome tonight. I'm so glad you're here. It's so fun to see all your faces. My name is Stephanie Weinert. I'm a senior director with Beautycounter, which is a clean beauty brand based in Santa Monica, California. That's my work from home business. I'm a mom to 5 children, ranging from age 9 to 6 months old. And I live here in Charlotte, North Carolina with the 5 kids, our big dog, and my very patient husband, who's also home with us full time for the past who knows how many months or years it has been. What day is it today, everyone? But the call that you're on is usually my team's Beautycounter business call. So every Monday night at this time, we get together as a team, we learn business strategies, and I coach many of the beautiful women that you see. And when I told my team that Lisa Canning was going to come on and do a talk for us on time management, we kind of just looked at each other on our Zoom call and said, why don't we open this up to the public? Let's invite everyone, because it's not just those of us who are working at home for Beautycounter that are having a heightened level of stress in our business right now. We are all in this together, no matter what business you have. If you're working from home, whether you're a mom, whether you're single, it does not matter. Everyone is in this brand new, unprecedented phase of life here. We're all struggling. And I know that Lisa has so much to offer us. So before I introduce Lisa to you, I want you to introduce yourself in the chat box, because Lisa can see it, I can see it, we can all see it. And I want you to tell us where you're from and tell us what your business is, because it's helpful for us to know what you're doing in your life as we begin this discussion together. So please introduce yourself in the chat. My team will be in the chat welcoming you there. So I'm so excited that you all are here. And Lisa Canning, you're down in Florida. So this is funny. I went to Ave Maria University. Lisa now lives there, where I graduated from college. She's the mom of 8 kids, and she's the author of The Possibility Mom: How to Be a Great Mom and Pursue Your Dreams at the Same Time. Lisa, welcome tonight. You are just such a gift to us. Thank you for being here on this call.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Oh, well, you are so generous with your time to do this call for us. I know that you've done this for a lot of women during this time, and you know more than anyone how crazy this is and how we're all trying to navigate so many new things. But maybe just start us off and tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey, both career-wise and your family.
Absolutely. And if my internet gives problems, everybody just like wave and tell me, because I'll just keep talking.
Okay.
So my name is Lisa Canning. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada. And for the last 10 or so years, I ran an interior design business, getting my start on HGTV. So I worked in front of the camera, hosting a show. And then I went on to have a career behind the camera, Brothers, and many other HGTV shows that you would know. So I was working behind the scenes on their teams, and it was super fun. I loved it so much, and I was getting, international coverage. My projects were getting published in magazines. I was starting to see projects in Canada, the United States, all kinds of places. And just as quickly as my interior design business and broadcast career grew, my family size grew. I can't even, when I do the math, I'm like, it hurts my head. But I've had 8 children in 11 years. And when I was growing my interior design business, probably at the peak time of business, I had had 4 kids in 5 years. And that's when everything came to a really crushing implosion for me. I was doing live television. I was working really hard on the Property Brothers team. I was renovating my own home, and everything hit me one day in my minivan. I remember sitting there. So I'm from Toronto, where it snows, and it had just snowed. It was November, and the city was just like this beautiful dusting. And when it's like all clean and pretty and it just snows, it just looks so like perfect and pristine. And I just remember looking out of my window and then looking into my car and being like, this is the exact opposite of what my minivan looks like, because my minivan had on the passenger side interior design, like paint samples, fabric samples, like spilling out of my purse. On the floor of my car, I had basically a potpourri of Cheerios and crushed goldfish crackers and water bottles and sippy cups. If you are a mother and you feel my pain, just give me an amen in the comments, because my minivan was just dégoûtant, French word for disgusting. I had multiple car seats of multiple sizes for my multiple kids. And way in the back, I had my brand new baby, literally just 5 days out of hospital. And I was parked outside of a client's house, ready to bring her into a messy construction site. I still had the epidural Band-Aid on my back. I still had a pad the size of Mount Rushmore down there because I had just given birth. And I had put so much internal pressure on myself to show up and show everybody that you could have it all and do it all and be this superhero, super mom, boss mom, all the things. And that's when I realized that my priorities were as messy as my minivan. And basically from that day onward, I said to myself, I went on this mission to find another way. I was like, there has got to be another way, because I knew my gifts were important. I knew that there was something in my heart that had been placed there that I was meant to do, and that I wasn't really supposed to keep that to myself. But at the same time, I knew that like my marriage needed a ton of work. I knew that it was not a good idea that I was never seeing my children. I was working so much that I would leave the house before they got up, and then I would come home long after they had gone to bed. And so and my health was awful. My health was just like falling apart. I was hardly sleeping. I was eating fast food all the time. And so I knew there had to be another way. And I went on this mission. I read everything I could on productivity. I used myself and my life as this like petri dish to see how a woman could pursue her dreams and be a great mom at the same time. And I eventually turned all of that into my brand new book. It's still in it's coming on its 1 year anniversary, which I can't even believe. The Possibility Mom: How to Be a Great Mom and Pursue Your Dreams at the Same Time. And so now I've transitioned to my career to coaching and speaking and online courses. And I'm so grateful that I'm here.
I didn't realize that your book was that young. So when I got your book, it must have been hot off the press, because I've had it for almost a year. So I found you through, we have a mutual friend, Jen Fulweiler, and I learned about you through Jen and bought your book off Amazon. And I have gifted your book to several of my consultants. Like, you have to read this too. Like, this is so helpful. I didn't realize it had been so new at the time that I got it. But what you experienced in your minivan is kind of like what a lot of women on this call are experiencing right now. We're having the minivan moment, looking out over the beautiful snow, stuck in our quarantine homes going, okay, I signed up for this business. Like, I have this job. All my kids are home. Many people are trying to figure out homeschooling. And it doesn't even have to be a mom with kids. You could have just, had a job outside your home, and now you're stuck in your home. Maybe you have a spouse who's also home with you, and you're just trying to figure all of this out. And it's time for all of us to find another way. So I'm so glad that you're here to you have been through this before. From the moment coronavirus hit the United States, your message on social media has always been hope, hope, hope. There's hope for all of you. There's hope because you have been through this. You've experienced it in the past. So where do we start? Actually, where I would love to start is where I have heard you start before, and that is not talking about skills and what to do first, but our mindset. And my team knows I coach on mindset all the time in our team, because I believe it's the core of everything. What you tell yourself, your internal dialogue, it changes everything. So can you talk to us a little bit about mindset for working from home right now?
This is what I've learned about neuroscience and the brain, is that it's like a computer, and we can kind of tell it things. And the biggest thing that I've realized is the more we tell it negative things, the more it looks for negative patterns. If you imagine your brain like a piece of paper, right? When you fold a piece of paper and you make that groove, when you unfold it, even if you try to like flatten it, iron it, whatever, you're still going to see that groove. The brain is exactly the same way. So when we tell ourselves, oh, like there's no way I can exercise, and you just keep telling yourself that there's no way I can exercise, there's no way I can exercise, there's no way I can exercise, the brain literally just looks for that pattern. It just keeps folding that piece of paper over and over again, and you get a deeper, deeper, deeper trench, right? And so what if in this time of COVID, what if we saw this time as a gift? What if during this time the gift of slowing down, the gift of being home actually wasn't a challenge. And I'm not trying to say there aren't significant challenges about it. But what if we could shift the mindset to every day this is hard, to every day, what is the opportunity today? Rather than waking up and being like, oh my gosh, it's another long and frazzling day. What if we were able to say, today's going to have challenges, but I am a woman of solution? I really do think it has to start with just our overall mindset and the internal dialogue that's running through our heads. And here's the thing, you might not even know it. You might have been going this whole time, maybe you started Beautycounter or another business and you were just so excited. And this is only catching up with you now because of COVID. You know what I mean? Like, we're all coming from very different perspectives. But what I want to challenge all of us tonight is that if you've never thought about the inner story, the inner words, all the inner things that go on in your brain, take a moment and think about what your inner scripts or your inner story or the things that you tell yourself every day. What are those things? And how is that informing your ability to create, your ability to move forward in your business, your ability to, XYZ? Let me tell you a story. This is very vulnerable. Are you all ready? This is like super vulnerable. I hate this is it. But I'm stepping out. This is my word for the week is authenticity. I just want to be as authentic as possible. When we moved here, so Stephanie mentioned we were in Toronto where I was born and raised, and we just had a real great pull in our heart to move down here to Ave Maria, Florida. We had visited the town many times. If you've ever everybody needs to come visit here. But let me just paint the picture. It is this idyllic small town built around a church where there's one circle where there's only like one restaurant, one coffee shop, one hairdresser, one bank. Like, it's just like, picture the most cute old school town, but Starbucks is like, 20 minutes away. Like, it's just this idyllic, adorable town. So we had in palm trees. Who doesn't love palm trees and sunshine all the time? So we had taken this big leap and, sold everything we owned in Toronto, came down here, and we realized about a month or so before our house closed here, we had made a $50,000 mistake. So long story short, on our closing costs, we were supposed to have more money than we thought. As a result, I came down here with $50,000 less than I thought I would have, with all these stories and, words of shame and blame and guilt. How could you be so stupid? How could you make that mistake? Now you're starting off in stress, like on and on and on and on and on. And I stayed there for a really long time. So this is very fresh. We just moved here. We're coming up on maybe our 7th month. And I would say for the first 2-3 months, I was like paralyzed, you guys, paralyzed. I just kept like just piling on the shame and the blame and the guilt. And I tell you this story because I want to encourage you that if you are currently waking up every day thinking, this is hard, how on earth can I run a business with kids at home? Nobody wants to buy makeup. Nobody's going to listen to me. Those things impact your ability to create. Those things impact your ability to move. Those things impact your ability to sell. Those things impact your ability to show up and become the greatest version of yourself. How do we get out of that? So when I was in this time of shame and blame and guilt and all these things, I could not create. When we're in that state of fear, it's fight or flight. Like, there's a part of your brain called the amygdala that literally goes into overgear to keep you safe. That's what it does. Cortisol starts pulsing, you start stress eating, you start, entertaining yourself with, your phone or with Netflix so that you don't feel that pain. That's what the brain does. And I finally had to be like, it was like a come to Jesus moment. I had to be like, Lisa, you have a choice right now. You can continue this shame, blame, and terrible guilt story that you've been really like piling upon yourself. Or you can choose, as I've said already on this call, to be a woman of solution. How can you get out of this? What can you do? What can you control? How can you create something? And I started to move. And so that's what I'd really encourage all of us today. This is a hard time. There is a beautiful article that I'll try to find in a moment, but it's called the Stockyard I think it's called the stockyard paradigm, or the stockyard paradox, where it's a story from, he was a veteran of a war, and he was a prisoner of war, and for many, many years was, put under just the worst conditions, tortured and beaten, and all these things. There is a bit of a paradigm of,
if he stayed in bed, he might miss seeing. Okay.
oh, sorry. Okay. There's a bit of a paradigm with recognizing that there is a situation that is challenging and not being naive to it, but also looking ahead and being hopeful. I believe that you can do the two. So we can recognize this is challenging. Our kids are home. We perhaps have less focused time. But what in this situation can I control? What in this situation can I see as an opportunity? There you go, Stockdale Paradox. Thank you, Allegra, so much. The Stockdale Paradox. It's an incredible read. I really recommend that you copy and paste this link. Go and do it right now. Copy and paste this link, put it in another thing in your browser, and go and read this when this call wraps. So you can look at the reality, but also look ahead in hope. And so I would just encourage you to just pause right now, and feel free if you want to in the chat. If there is a phrase or a story or a something that you keep saying to yourself that perhaps doesn't serve you right now, go ahead and type that in. And how can we translate, transform? How can we create a script that is kind of the opposite of that, or that will help your brain to move forward and get out of that situation and create? So just take a moment right now. And if you're brave, please feel free to put it into the chat. Like I said, mine was, oh, you're stupid and you made a mistake. I find sometimes, even in this period, I find myself saying things like, this is impossible. What was my book called? The Possibility Mom. Anytime I hear myself say the word, this is impossible, I'm like, Lisa.
You've doomed yourself, Lisa.
You know it's not impossible. So yeah, feel free if you want to. So Carolyn says, you will fail your children. Yeah, and this is the thing. None of us wants to do that. All of us want to come out of this situation with kids who are loved, with kids that are happy, with our spouses who feel supported, and ourselves who feel supported. I have no money to spend, so no one has no money to spend either. Ooh, that's a good one. I failed at the direct sales thing before. Why would this time be any different? I'm not as good as the others. I can't be a good mom, Cindy says, and do all the things. Mandy says, I agree, having a hard time asking because I'm not sure people secure enough to buy. Oh boy, are we going to have fun. And you know what? The common thread to me in all of these things is I'm a woman of solution. Like that to me is my favorite script when I feel overwhelmed. And when you think about it, like even just the words like, this is impossible. Wait a minute. I'm a woman of solution. Even if I just want to encourage you to just those few words. I'm a woman of solution. Like it almost just even the posture when you say, I'm a woman of solution. You know what? Let's do it right now. Keep yourselves on mute. But right now I want you to look into the camera. And I just want you to say, like, square shoulders. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. I'm a woman of solution. I'm a woman of solution. One more time with a big smile. I'm a woman of solution. And I think many of the things that I see here, and we're going to talk about some practical ways, like, for example, Ali, how can I do all the things but do it well? We're going to talk about some of those things in a practical way. But I think mindset is where we have to begin.
Yep. Well, let's move from mindset a little bit to skill set. What are some things that as you're coaching women, I know you're coaching every day right now, you're coaching women who come to you with all the same things. You coached me a couple weeks ago. That's how we started getting to know each other. I had a one-on-one with Lisa, and it was earlier in our COVID journey. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? I have all these kids and a special needs baby, and I have this huge business I'm trying to run, and no babysitters are coming to my house. Like, what do I do? What do I do? And mindset first, but then what can we do to start looking at our day, looking at our life and our situation to make it work?
So number one is, how can you carve out focused time? So this is going to look different for everybody. And by the way, if you want to just sit and enjoy, I have a download that I will give
Yep.
to you where all of this is in. But feel free to take notes as well, because it can help process the information better. So number one is, how can you carve out focus time? Now, this is going to look different for everybody. I too have no babysitting anymore. So what I used to do was I would have coaching calls in the morning, and I would have a babysitter come, and I just knew, exactly how many people I could coach based on how much babysitting I could get. It was fairly practical and functional. But this time, where we have, maybe your spouse is also working full time, or maybe your spouse is still leaving the house and working, you have no babysitting, we've got to get really creative. Okay, so number one, if you have a spouse that also has the ability to be somewhat flexible, or just in like, it could be like uniquely flexible, like, maybe it's early morning or late at night, but talk with your spouse. That's be the first place I would begin. I would have the conversation of, hey, I really want to be able to do mothering well, wifing well, and my business well. And it's really hard when I do it all at the same time. However, if I was able to get 2 hours in the morning or whatever time, 2 hours to just like hunker down and get a bunch of stuff done efficiently, I could then be freed up to give you time, to be present to the kids, rather than all of us being distracted. So what does that look like for me practically in my house? I work in the mornings from 8:30 until 11 o'clock, and that is when I schedule my coaching calls. And then I have a block of time in the evening when my kids are in bed between 8 and 10 p.m. when I schedule my coaching calls. Now, I ideally don't want to be working in the evening, but I am making an exception during this period because of the, unusual circumstances. So that would be number one, is, can you chat with your spouse or even with older children? If you've got kids old enough who can, man the fort, explain to them, like, mom is running a business. I need a little bit of focus time. Do you think you can lead lead your siblings in an activity or what have you? Obviously safety, making sure it's appropriate. But number one is, I would look at your spouse. Okay. Number two, let's say you don't have a spouse who is able to do that. I know, Stephanie, your spouse is very busy with meetings all day long as well. How can we then get creative with the time our children are sleeping? Okay. So this might only apply to people with smaller children who nap or what have you. So let me talk to you first. Make the most out of nap time. And when I say make the most out of nap time, I mean, like, if you've got kids who still nap and you've got other kids, put their TV time when the smaller kids are napping, so that you can at least then get like a concentrated effort while you save the screen time for when other kids are napping, right? Now, I'm sure many of you have kids who are beyond napping or what have you. Feel free to let me know if you've got small kids, older kids. Let me know your particular situation in the chat, and we can definitely speak into it. But perhaps then, if you, nap time isn't going to work or what have you, doesn't apply to your situation, or maybe your kids don't nap well, whatever it is, then what can we do in the early morning? And what can we do when kids go to sleep? For me, it's not ideal to be working at night, but I'm choosing to do that in this unique situation. But what could you get done in the morning? Even if it's only an hour. And guys, I know it's hard. I'm not trying to say it's not hard to wake up early. Oh my word. But if you woke up an hour early and you just were so clear on what is it that you needed to do, maybe you might be hearing objections in your head, like, no, but like, how can I talk to clients if I'm getting up at 6? Maybe you're sending a whole bunch of voice memos, or you're recording a whole bunch of videos and you're sending them to your prospective clients. Right? And you're just bulking all of that in a time when you can be focused. The key here, and that's going to move me into our second point, once we figured out the focus time, what are we doing in this focus time? Okay, before I move on though, are there any questions about how to get focus time? So number one, chat with your spouse. Number two, older children also can help you get focus time. Number three, what are we doing when children are sleeping? Either, waking up really early, or of course working into the evening. And then the other thing I want to say is being really strategic. Then if you do have some small kids who are napping, everybody's watching TV. You know what I mean? At the same time, one thing I've been talking with a lot of moms is, yes, I know we all have different opinions on screen time. And I'm not trying to say, like, you do what's comfortable for you, but like, use screen time sometimes to have that little bit of focus time. Okay, so that's number one. If there are any specific questions about focus time, let's see if we can help each other out. So Megan says we have a mandatory rest time for all our kids, regardless of age. Send them upstairs to their rooms.
Yeah.
All kids can do that. have some quiet time. And, you know, yes, you might get people trickling in and out, but use that quiet time for yourself. Books on Audible or a CD are great too if you don't want to use screens. Absolutely. We used almost screen free, but I'm making very strategic. Exactly. It's being strategic in your screen time. I'm going to tell you something else I used to do, and I still do this. I do, Jennifer Fulweiler, I do all of my radio interviews in my car. I use my car really strategically. I have done in the past when we had no childcare and I was growing my interior design business, I would just load up all my toddlers. I would put an audiobook on in the car and I would do calls while I was driving. And that's just how I got it done. And if people fell asleep, I would park somewhere and I would work some more. I think we can, like, we have to think creatively, but think of the ways that you can get the focus time in. Audible and Lego, Susan says, is a winner with my kids. Carolyn says, quiet time in our house is from 1 to 3 p.m. Everyone goes to their room. Okay. Caitlin says, only screens, keep them quiet. Again, I empower you to choose what works best for your family. In my house, I have no issue with screens, but I totally respect if other people would prefer other ways. But focus, that's it. Number 1 is focus time. All right. Number 2 is what to do with the focus time. So this is where I think I have a unique perspective on work-life integration, balance, whatever you want to call it, because I have always had scarcity of time, always. So my children are 11. Are you ready? Are you ready for the ages of my children? Get ready. Where's the wine? Hold your wine in your hand. It'd be like a drinking game every time I say an age. So 11, 9, 8, 6, 4, 3, almost 2, and then the baby is 4 months. Okay. Did you, oh, Rachel, you're so sweet. Thank you for that lovely round of applause. So I have had a baby every other month, basically, or not every other month, every other year, every 18 months, I've had a baby, which means that I have basically always been pregnant or I have always been nursing. I basically get like a small little break in there where I can like go wild, but that's it. And that's when we get pregnant. Go wild. Anyway, but because of that, I have learned that scarcity has been my secret strategy to moving the needle forward in my business. I had to, as a result of my circumstances, identify the things that would move my business forward and only use the time I had childcare to do that. So let me unpack that in an example that's pertinent to me, and then let's come up with an example for Beautycounter. So in interior design, I started to look at, okay, if I only have so in the beginning, my mom was my childcare and my husband, who was working full time, would give me whatever time he could, right? In the evenings or what have you. So I knew that, oh my gosh, this would not be enough. Like there was no way I could get everything done with the limited amount of childcare if I tried to only work when I had childcare. So then I had to start thinking, okay, what do I absolutely need to be child free for? And so in my interior design business, that was client meetings. That was some stuff going on site because it wouldn't be safe or what have you, or I needed to be focused. And then some focused design work. So I was like, okay, I need to reserve my childcare time for that. So then I was like, okay, what are things that I actually can get done with children either with me or around me and do that with a fair bit of success? So I realized that I could take my kids shopping with me. Oh my word. It was like 2 little kids in a stroller. I would be going through all these like fancy design stores and I would just be like, do not touch anything. Like just like hands in. Anyway, but I learned, this is just to illustrate that there were things that I could do with kids around. And I was like, okay, like this could work. You know, might it go faster if I didn't have kids with me? Sure. But given my circumstances, this is what I'm going to do. We need to do the same thing here. So we need to identify in our businesses and our lives, everything in every aspect, we need to identify what's going to move the needle farthest along. And in our focus time, we are only doing that. We are not checking social media. We are not, answering all the emails. We are not, I don't know, like catching up on what was on Jimmy Fallon last night. Like we are just head down and what's going to move the needle forward. So let's talk about it in a Beautycounter or a direct sales type of, or any kind of, I'm not sure all your businesses, but I can see that many of you are Beautycounter here. What is the activity that would move the needle forward in Beautycounter? And if I am not mistaken, it's going to be connecting with people. Is that right, Stephanie?
It is, yes, it is definitely connecting with people. One thing that I have learned and tried to coach my team on is having humility as a work from home woman helps a lot, because when I started, I had to do all my client calls when there was somebody watching the kids or a babysitter, because I couldn't have I couldn't have anyone hear a fight break out with my kids, like while I'm trying to discuss skincare with someone. Or, I do a lot of onboarding calls for women who join my team. Well, or perspective calls with those who are interested in the business. And I couldn't have a call like that if my kid was screaming, or if I'm feeding a baby, and I've learned that that's not true. Like, people do not mind when you have grace and humility to just be authentically you. Like,
Oh,
yes, I'm
100%.
home. I've got all my kids around me. This is my home business, and I'm sorry it's loud, and that's just
And
the way
here's
it
the
is.
thing. Right now, everyone
Everybody.
has their child at home. Everyone. So I really want to encourage you. So let me just like unpack a couple scenarios. So let's say the only focus time you can get is honestly 15 minutes. Okay. For whatever reason, it's like 15 minutes in the morning when your husband is able to, man the fort, and you can like lock yourself in your office. If it were me and I had 15 minutes, I would strategize who are the people I want to impact today. So I'd maybe make a list of like I learned this from Stephanie, 5 of my favorite customers that I just want to send a voice message. But all I'm doing in that 15 minutes is I'm writing that down. That's all I'm doing. I would maybe make a list of 10 people who I think, they would really love a sample. And I think, right now it's really a hard time. I'm going to brighten their day. And I would write out those 10 people. And then maybe there's like a last little portion of that 15 minutes is like, what kind of thing could I do online that would be high leverage? So I know, Stephanie, I saw you were doing some kind of like virtual girls' night. So maybe you spend just 5 minutes thinking about that. Now, if you have more time than that, of course, you could start executing. But if you've only got 15 minutes, I would spend it in strategy. And then I would find the pockets of your day where you can shoot off a quick FaceTime video, or a quick whatever it is, just like a video, whatever, and send that off in the small pockets when your children are maybe eating lunch and are occupied, or are upstairs in their room having their rest time or their independent play time, or what have you. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So even if
Yep.
you only have 15 minutes, I would identify what is going to move the needle forward. And, feel free, Stephanie, like if you were a mom in this time that only had 15 minutes, what else would you focus on strategy wise?
Well, I think the strategy is so key. Just to focus on strategy for a second, because I feel like what happens when we have a home business and we're working for ourselves, this becomes your best friend and your worst enemy to time. Because what happens is, you might have a plan and you sit down, but you open up Instagram because you're going to post something about your business on Instagram. But you see what somebody else is doing, and that sends you down a rabbit hole, and then you second guess what you were going to doing, and it's just a time suck. So how I train is, if you have 10 minutes to work, you have to know before you sit down in your chair exactly what you're going to do in those 10 minutes. And you have to do that thing. You cannot get distracted. You cannot listen to, we use Boxer for coaching. You cannot listen to Boxer messages. You cannot scroll Instagram. You cannot look at your email. You're going to do exactly it. But really, the power that I have found in my own business is knowing what I'm going to do before I sit down. I can do a ton of work in 10 minutes. I've learned how to do a ton of work in 10 minutes, but it's because I know what I'm going to do before I put my butt in the chair, and I can boom, just get it out. And I can tell my husband, I need 10 minutes, and just be so effective. Where years ago, working a similar job, I could have taken 60 minutes to do the same thing.
And here's the point that's very important in what Stephanie just said, is we have got to make progress over perfection.
Yes.
So when I was blogging, I remember before I had children, I would spend like an entire day on a blog post. It was like 8 hours of just like, let's try this title and let's try this title. And like, oh, let's find the perfect image. And like, oh, we got to tweak the graphic on Canva. Let's just tweak it some more. Then I had children and I was like, oh my word, I'm never going to publish a blog post if they all take me 8 hours. So then I literally had to learn, okay, then I got it down to a science, and it was like an hour. We've got to get good at good enough. literally. And what is your good enough is honestly, most of the time, somebody else is like 100%. You know what I mean? Yes, Clara, progress over perfection.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you a story about my book, The Possibility Mom. So I signed the contract for that book. Oh gosh, I can't remember the date, but it took 2.5 years for that book to go from contract to sign to out in the world. And not because I'm a slow writer. I basically had the entire book, 10 chapters or whatever it is. And that last chapter, I wouldn't finish. And I was like, oh gosh, like I let 3 deadlines come and go from my publisher. And finally, I was at a conference in Toronto where James Wedmore, if anyone listens to his podcast, he was the speaker. And he said on the stage, I remember I was way at the back of the stage because I was like 100 months pregnant yet again. And I had my computer on my lap like this because I was so pregnant, and my feet were up because I was at, you get tired at a conference, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so over it. I'm so pregnant. And I remember I just I was at the very back, so passively engaged like this. And then all of a sudden I shut up, and I was like, he's talking only to me. And he literally said that perfectionism is a shield from being judged.
Oh,
Perfectionism is a shield. Clara, write this on your window, on your mirror. The perfectionism is a shield from being judged. And I realized in that moment, that's exactly what was happening. I was not moving forward on the book. I was not finishing it because I was terrified of what people were going to think. And here's what he said in the talk right after. He was like, guess what? People are judging you right now anyways. So who the heck cares? So again, what might be not perfect for you, maybe you want to have a great pitch or a great voicemail that you can leave people, and you want to practice it 100%. I'm not saying don't pursue excellence, but also don't be afraid to learn while doing. Fail faster. I love that expression. There's another one for the mirror. Fail faster. The faster we fail, the faster we make progress. The faster we make progress, the faster we get to our most ideal life. And if I may just pause for one quick second, I also want to encourage you to have a dream of where you want to go. Because my wonderful friend, January Donovan, she says this all the time. Why do some people get out of bed and do things and are able to do things with, a bunch of kids or whatever? When I was writing my book, The Possibility Mom, I remember reading stuff like Tolstoy had written one of his big, I think, War and Peace or whatever it is. And he had 13 children, and I remember I was reading all these things when I was learning how to be a writer myself. Why is it that some people can, write a book with 13 children running around or whatever it is? And for other people, it's difficult. And what January says all the time is when you have a dream that gives you hope, and the hope is what fires you out of bed and into action. This has been a very hard time for me, I'll be honest, tiring. I am tired. I remember the other morning I was on the floor of my master bedroom closet where we change diapers. We don't have a change pad yet. It's one of the things I've been meaning to get, but haven't gotten around to it. So we have a pad on the floor. Sometimes it looks like literally grenades. When you take diapers and you ball them up, they're all over the place. They look like grenades. It's honestly a mess. And I just remember I was sitting there looking at my grenade diaper room where all my clothes were. And I was just I don't want to get up. I just sat there and was I'm just going to sit here and hope nobody finds me. But then I remembered, who am I coaching today? Whose life can I help make brighter? Whose life can I help make easier today? What can I do? How am I going to serve my family? And that is what got me out of my seat, into the kitchen, making a coffee, doing the things, taking care of my kids. Hope comes when we have a dream. And when that dream and that hope are in place, we move. And so I would encourage you, whether it be the dream in your heart is to have $50 a week, whether the dream in your heart is to have $500 a month, whether the dream in your heart is to have $5,000 a month, $500,000 a year, whatever it is, I want to encourage you, and I'm sure Stephanie is taking you some of this training, to actually have a picture of what that looks like and visit that picture every day, whether it's a vision board or simply a statement that you type out and you write, you read rather regularly, and you simply continue to inform yourself of the person you want to become. That for me is really the secret sauce, if you will, being able to have a vision of where you want to go, and then be able to work backwards with a strategic plan, but also with hope. Hope is really, I think, a huge motivator.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Let's talk a little bit about priorities, because I was watching the comments earlier when people were introducing themselves or saying what their fears were, that I saw it come out. Anne, you were one, Anne Caldwell, I saw your comment. You said there's no time in the list for me anyway, so I don't even, bother bringing myself into the conversation. And a lot of women are feeling this, whether you're single, whether you're married with kids right now, it really doesn't matter. Everyone is struggling with a lot of things. And how do we prioritize work in the greater picture of life? Because everything's now inside these four walls, Lisa. And we have to prioritize not just our work life, but where it fits in with the bigger picture inside these walls.
So when I had my minivan meltdown, this was sort of like halfway through my interior design career and halfway through my mothering career, so to speak. I had to really have a sincere come to Jesus moment, to use that expression, but actually very literal. I had to literally be like, God, what on earth do you want from me? And one of the things that became really clear and really helpful for me, I talk about this in the book, but one of the most practical ways to kind of get your priorities in check, and get them in line with how you're actually spending your time, is to simply fast forward and think about how you want to be remembered at the end of your life. Now if it's too morbid for you to go like all the way to the end and like your obituary, that's how that exercise resonates with me strongly. But I can appreciate that for some people that would be too far to go. Back it up a few years and maybe think about like your retirement party. So let's say you have worked Beautycounter for many, many years, or whatever industry you're in. And you're standing in a room, you're wearing a fancy dress, you're wearing your favorite pair of shoes, you've got your husband there, your kids, God willing, grandkids, God willing, and people start coming up to a podium and sharing things about your life and how you have impacted them. What is it you want them to say? What is it you hope your life has stood for? What do you hope the actions that you take every single day will lead to in a great contribution? What does that look like? And so for me, that was a huge like aha, that like I knew I did not only want to be remembered for the work I did. I knew that if I continued down that path of working 80 hours and hardly ever seeing my children and just cramming them into the nooks and crannies that work did not occupy, that future sense of myself would not be true. My children would not be able to say I was a loving and present mom because I would not be there. So I think where we have to, do this. And again, you might be thinking like, oh my gosh, like how on earth do I prioritize my family anymore? I already feel like I'm swimming and I'm just like serving everybody else. But here's one way. We do schedule deep work or like focus time for our husbands and our children. So one thing I've been telling a lot of the moms that I'm coaching, so I coach moms one-on-one, is to have at least an hour a day where you just like lock this, just put it away, lock it up, do not look at it. And you're like, guys, I'm here. Like, it's just, you can explain to your children, this is unusual times, guys. I know it's weird that we're like schooling and I'm working and whatever, but right now, mom is 100% here for you. And you do whatever would be fun. You go for a walk, you play Nintendo with your kids, whatever would, you read them stories, you just talk to them, drive around if you want to, have conversations in the car, whatever it is. But it's like phone away, completely focused. For me, I'm feeling peaceful even just saying it. Like this was a non-negotiable before COVID. Between the hours of 3 and 5 p.m., my phone was always just completely away. And I would encourage you to develop a similar practice where you have at least 1 hour where the phone is gone. And it could just
Can I just say it's a relief? Like I did not really do this until you coached me one-on-one. And this is one of the things you told me to do. I just feel like this load lifts when I put it away. And I'm doing a time block in the morning and a time block in the afternoon. And it's just, I just love having the break, because when you work from home or when you coach others in business and it's always there and you're just getting those pinged messages if somebody needs something and not to even know it's there. I mean, I know it's there, but it has just been just a beautiful thing. I love it.
And we are, when you think about it, more in control of things than we perhaps realize. Like you have the ability to turn this on, to turn this off. You have the ability to unplug your Wi-Fi if you have to get to that resort. Like, you get to decide. Yes, we want to serve our clients 100%. We all want to give good customer service. But that does not mean you are bending over backwards in a way that's going to sacrifice your health and your relationships. Mm-mm. You know, people can wait an hour, you know, like, it's all right. And give yourself that permission. So that's one thing, is to make sure there's phone free time. The other thing is like date night. You got to keep date night. So I have a signature time management program, Conquer Your Calendar, where I teach time blocking and I teach my hacks of, you know, with 8 children and all the things, and how to delegate, how to delete. And one of the things that has remained so consistent for me in COVID, that I was like, no way we are giving this up, is date night. Now, it looks different, obviously. Normally our date night would be going to the local pub here, the one pub in my town of like 200 people. I'm exaggerating, but so now we do a beautiful like cheese and meat board with crackers. We get fancy, you know, like we pour the wine, like, and we just make it a very, like, we put our phones away and we just try to make it a really enjoyable experience at home. But if you want to be remembered as a loving and present wife, if you want to be remembered as a loving and present mother, there have to be actions today that will make that true in the future. There's a great quote in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, where he says, I'm going to ruin it, but it's something like every action we take is a vote for the person we want to become. Every action we take is a vote for the person we want to become. And it's just, when you think about it, it's very logical. So, very, very logical. Like, if I want to be a person who is fit, I can't really do that without making fit choices, right? If I want to be a person who is a good listener or a good friend, I can't do that without actually listening or actually doing things that would make me a good friend, right? And it's simply just taking stock of this person we want to become and the activities today that would make that true. Let me give you just one more, illustration of this from my minivan meltdown time. So I realized very quickly after my minivan meltdown that if you were to open up my calendar and look at the things that I was actually spending my time on, 95% of it was work. 95. And I would just, like I said earlier, sneak in the little tiny pockets of time that did not get taken up by work, my family and my husband, and it didn't work. It didn't work. And so what I teach in Conquer Your Calendar, and what I encourage all of us to do, is flip it. Let's schedule in first the big rocks, the things that will make the future version of ourselves true, and schedule those things in first, and then fit everything else in between. Okay, now you might be thinking, how on earth do I make this possible in COVID? This is a unique time. Like stockyard principle, like, we have to acknowledge that this is a unique time. Perhaps you're not going to be spending as much time or doing it in the exact same way. So for example, fitness. Let's say before COVID, you were going out and doing a spin class. Let's not throw out the whole concept of doing a spin class. What can you do at home? What can you do at home with kids all around you? Again, progress over perfection. It might not look exactly the same. It might be weird to exercise with your kids. Your kids might be laughing at you. I do these cardio workouts on my YouTube, and I do it in my living room, and my kids basically laugh at me because I cannot do a burpee, and they're like, "Mommy, you're not doing it like the video." Basically, that's what working out looks like for me right now. But who cares? Right? You're still making a deposit, so to speak. You're still putting a vote towards the person you want to become. You want to be a fit person, you got to do things that fit people do, like exercise. And regardless of the situation, and the limitations and the practical realities of this time, I still argue that you can do those things in different ways. Yep. Okay, now I'm seeing in the comments, Stephanie, I'm sorry, I get so excited, but I got to finish this point. So what happens? So in Conquer Your Calendar, the way I teach it is time blocking. So we put in the big rocks first: time for your marriage, time for yourself, time for your kids, time for your career. What happens when you've run out of time? Well, this is where we've got to get really creative and delegate, automate, and delete. So Here's a really practical thing for your Beautycounter and other businesses. What in your business can you automate? One thing I learned from my interior design career was that it's literally, I'm following the same 15 steps in every process, you know, like meet with a client, get them to sign a paper, create the design, you know, measure the space. You can measure first, but you know what I mean? Da, 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 da. I was basically doing the same 15 steps every single time. And when I was able to put that down on paper, all of a sudden, everything became so much more efficient. I realized there were pieces of the process I could hand off to other people. I realized there were pieces of the process that people could just like fill out online. I'm sure Beautycounter has some ways like within their system that you can automate things, but look at the systems. So when you meet a client, what's your next step that you're going to do? Maybe you're sending them a sample. Okay, what's your next step you're going to do? In that sample bag, is there like a sticker, a this, a that? Who packs that? Where do you get all those resources? And allow that to become a systemized process that could be followed, you know, the same way every single time. One thing that I still struggle with is right now I have, I sometimes personally send out books. So you can buy my book on Amazon, you can buy my books on Barnes & Noble, Target, whatever. But I sometimes personally send out my books. I still, and it drives me nuts, but I'm like, oh, where are the little stickers that you put the address on them? I'm like looking around my house everywhere. Oh, where are the pink bubble wrappers that you do them? I'm like, oh, where's the stamps? Like, I have not created a system for that. So I make more work for myself every time I want to send a book out to someone. We can eliminate that. Yep. When we have a process that is repeatable and you literally have the stuff in the exact same spot, you know what I mean? You can save a lot of time. So automate, delegate, and delete. What in Beautycounter can be automated? I am sure there's a whole bunch of stuff that Beautycounter automates for you. What can you delegate? Is there someone, and forgive me if this is like incorrect, you correct me if not, but like, is there someone who would absolutely love to do things for you for, you know, a small amount of money, or maybe for products? Are you allowed to say that, Stephanie? I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like, who could you, if you're looking at repeatable processes, are there parts that don't really require you? And what could you do for somebody in exchange? You know, you throw somebody a great moisturizer and they are providing you, you know, blank and blank hours. Is that like a great job for a, you know, a teen or a college student? Think about things like that for delegation. And then of course, building, you know, eventually like Stephanie, having virtual assistants and what have you, when you get to the stage where you really do have to hand things off, thinking about things like that. And then deleting. So now deleting, you might not be deleting things in your business per se, but in this period of COVID, are there things right now that you really just need to put on pause that you could come back to in the future? Or even post-COVID, what I coach a lot of moms, and there's a lot of things in our lives that we can delete, automate, and delegate that we just have a really hard time because we're hanging on to it. You know, we don't have too much time to get into that, but we really got to take a hard, long look at ourselves and say, what is the life I want? And like Greg McKeown says in Essentialism, this book is an oldie, but a goodie. Essentialism.
Oh, that's I love that book.
It's like, it kind of like started it all. You know, it's a really old book by today's standards. I think it's like 10 years old now, but I really think it started, you know, right in there with the 4-hour work week, right in there with Atomic Habits. Greg McKeown's book, Essentialism, is really just the best synthesis, if you will, of having you think about, who am I? What am I best gifted at? What gives me the most life? And then say goodbye to everything else. It really is quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're almost out of time, Lisa. Let's talk about how everyone on this call and everyone who's going to listen to the recording can get in touch with you and get your resources, because I have them printed out in front of me. I've been working with them for the past several weeks when you gave them to me, but talk to us a little bit about what you have for the ladies on this call.
Absolutely. So I'm going to drop the link in the chat, and please feel free to go and grab that right now before life gets busy and before the chat bar goes away. So I've got a download to my self-quarantine time management strategies for moms. You can go right there and click and grab the resource. And that basically has itemized basically almost everything I've talked about on this call. So that's number one, go and grab the download. Number two, Instagram is my favorite place. I recognize so many names here, and it's so amazing to put faces to people who I've been chatting with in DMs for the last little while. So at Lisa Canning is me on Instagram. And I'd love to invite you, if you would like to learn efficient ways to manage your time. I have a signature program called Conquer Your Calendar. I'll put the link in the chat bar as well, where you can learn about that program and help in your in your time management. And it's I've been sort of how do I explain, like, can you think about your time strategically during COVID? And I'm going to be honest with you, there have been times where I've just been like, throw my hands up in the air, Jesus, take the wheel, because I don't know what I'm doing. But honestly, if you can build the skills of time management in this climate, you can do anything. I mean that so sincerely. This is not like, buy my product. There are many ways that you can learn time management. But if you can master the art of time blocking, of understanding what is essential right now and what can be paused, of understanding where am I best equipped and meant to serve and show up with excellence in those areas, you can win. Think of this for a second. If you can hone in on your skills now, imagine what happens when we are just broadened and you can bring in babysitting and you can, kids are back in school. You will be unstoppable. Think about that for a second. This is the time. Like, this is a unique time when we're not going to soccer, when we're not going to ballet, when there's no swim meet, when we're not grocery shopping, when we're not just perusing, Nordstrom for hours on end or whatever it is, your store of choice, Target or whatever. This is the time to invest and create the version of yourself that you've always wanted to, in my humble opinion, if I may.
Oh, yeah, no, I love it. And it's not just our businesses that are going to be strong. I mean, the whole picture, our mindset. I did a Zoom call last week on self-discipline, and I love that term right now, because the more we can discipline ourselves during this time, we are going to come out as stronger, better people, and we're going to be more equipped to serve those around us, which I know every single woman on this call, she's here because she wants to serve. And we're going to be able to do that even better if we can learn these new disciplines during this time and become better people for it. Lisa Canning, I'm so grateful for you. I wish I could hug your neck in person right now. Someday I'm coming down to my alma mater. We're going to go to that pub together, and I just want to hang out with you.
100%.
It'll be awesome. All right. Well, ladies, thank you so much for being on the call. If you want to share this call with anyone, I will have the recording up on my YouTube channel tomorrow, and I will make sure that I put the links to Lisa's resources in the description of that. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can link to Lisa's resources right there in the description. So thank you again, Lisa, and thank you all for joining us on the call tonight. Have a good night, everybody. God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye.